Hey guys, James here, and welcome to another episode of Some Magical Story Time, where it's time for the third and final Halloween special of the year. Even more things that go bump in the night. The third trilogy of stories that I wrote in years past that I'm bringing back to life here. So, let's get on with the seventh story in the overall collection, shall we? Frankie McDougal had just moved into a new house in order to start a new life in the quiet of a small town. He'd just finished his evening meal of cottage pie and a half pint of lager and decided to go for an evening walk to burn off the pounds. He put on his trainers and out he went into the cool night air for his walk around the neighborhood. As he passed his kind elderly neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Northman, he gave them a friendly wave. Just as he came off his street and onto the avenue, he bumped into his young teenage neighbor, Summer Jackson, and stopped upon seeing the worried look on her face. "What's the matter, Summer?" he asked. "I'd turn back if I were you, Frankie," she told him, panicked. "How come?" asked Frankie. "There's this freakishly tall, thin man in the area who just stands around, smiling at people," she told him, her panic rising. So, I might need to reread that. "There's this freakishly tall man in the area who just stands around smiling at people," she told him, her panic rising. Frankie gave her a hug to try and calm her down, peering over her shoulder to see the freakishly tall, thin shadow appearing around the corner, and just stopped there. As they parted, he shone his torch at the shadow to reveal the owner of the shadow standing before them. A freakishly tall man, about 8 feet in height, and very thin, with a cartoonishly wide smile on his face. Summer leaned over and whispered, "That's him," into Frankie's ear. Frankie faced the man bravely with his hands on his hips. "Oi, you! What do you want with us?" he yelled at him, realizing his mistake as the man sped up and ran towards them, causing them to leg it as fast as they could. No matter how fast they ran, the man caught up to them within seconds. They leapt behind a tall tree as he ran past them and watched him vanish as he came to a curb. "What was that thing?" asked Summer in surprise. "I'll fill you in on it while I walk you home," replied Frankie, as he took her by the hand and walked her carefully home. South Hamilton, a town I wish I could say was like every other town we know, but I can't. You see, more than a century ago, a huge fire swept through the town, burning down all the houses and buildings. Yes, buildings, okay. Killing all the inhabitants. Nowadays, nobody goes there unless it's to explore and learn about what happened. Or in the case of our main character, Leanna Sinclair, it was for a dare. She was 36 years old and just loved taking dares from her friends. On this occasion, she had accepted their dare to venture into South Hamilton and stay there for a week. So on Monday, she packed her suitcase, loaded her car, and drove into the now abandoned town for her own little holiday. As she passed the marker into the town, she got chills as she looked around at all the burnt and destroyed buildings. Looking ahead, she saw a large crater where the fire started destroyed the town. As she parked up outside the old abandoned hotel, which had been burnt right down to the reception desk and a room on the ground floor, so she went in and made herself comfortable. The room was mostly intact, save for the wardrobe, which had been blown to pieces. How did this room manage to survive being burned down? She asked herself, as she unpacked her suitcase and hung her clothes in what was left of the wardrobe, and placed her underwear in the chest of drawers, which had also escaped being burnt or blown up. This made her feel a bit uneasy, but she stayed anyway. She was the only person in the town, and nobody outside the town knew she was even there, except for the friend who dared her to come and stay here for a week, after she bragged that nothing could scare her. She went out into the town to see just how much damage that fire had caused a century ago. She was amazed at what she saw. The deeper she went into town, the more damage she saw, and the more scared she started to feel. "This is a ghost town," she whispered, as she entered what was left of an old general store, and took a bar of dusty chocolate, which miraculously enough was still solid, and still in date despite being a century old. As the week progressed, she started noticing little details that seemed too surreal to be true. She had managed to find a week's worth of food that was miraculously still good and edible, and plenty of water for hydration. By now it was Sunday, and she was on her final day in town, which happened to be the anniversary of the disaster, and she was so scared she didn't feel she could complete the challenge. She had heard the legend of the ghost flames, which say that the ghost of the flames that destroyed the town comes sweeping through and traps any living person and then kills them. She did not believe a word of it until she exited the hotel with her bags packed ready to leave town, and saw the flames coming straight at her, blowing up her car before it even reached her. She dropped her luggage and ran as fast as she could, turning transparent every step of the way, wondering what was going on. Why was she turning transparent? This made no sense. She was a living human being, not a ghost. As she ran to the town marker, she found herself trapped in the town. She turned to walk back towards the town to find a whole town of transparent people standing before her. "What's going on?" she asked. A transparent man stepped forward. "You're dead, sweetie," he told her. This was the ghost of her father, and he took her hand, guiding her back into town to join her friends and family as the town faded away around them. David Lordley was a very strange boy, but he had no idea of it. He thought he was as normal as all his classmates, except nobody liked or felt comfortable around him, which made him feel left out of everything. His parents were very worried about him, thinking there might be something wrong with him. Let me fill you in on his circumstances. He was born at 3 a.m. on the third day of the third month to parents who inexplicably died the moment he was born. So he was adopted by his current parents, Martin and Fiona Lordley, who loved him to bits. 10 years had passed since then, and they had started to notice how different he was from the other children. Martin sat him down one afternoon and asked him how school was going. "Terrible," he replied sadly. Why, son? Asked Martin. I have no friends, Dad. Nobody there likes me. David told him sadly. Fiona sat next to him and pulled him into a cuddle as he burst into tears. They say I'm a weirdo, he cried. As he cried, Fiona caught some of his tears, which turned to crystals as they touched her hands. David, sweetie, she said. Yes, Mum, she replied. Your tears have turned into crystals, she told him, showing him one of the crystals. He looked at it in confusion and amazement. This fell from my eyes? He asked. Martin took another one. It appears so, son, he replied. This was only the start of the strangeness they all started to notice. As they all started to notice more weird things starting to happen. As David made his way home, that should be from the shop, he was forced to wait for someone to let him cross the road, which nobody did. Oh, come on! Somebody let me cross, will you? He said out of frustration, suddenly finding himself safely on the other side of the road. He was shocked. How did I get across the road? He asked. He looked at his hands to find a red and blue mark on his palms. He picked up his shopping and walked on like nothing had happened. Along the way, he met his neighbour, a kindly gentleman named Dennis Justin. Would you like a hand there, David? He asked. David accepted Dennis's help and was grateful to him for his help. He was so happy to have some genuine kindness dealt to him by a fellow human being. He glowed yellow and beamed a thumbs-up badge onto Dennis's chest. Martin and Fiona invited him in for a cup of coffee and a chat. I think I know why strange things happen around your son, he told them. Why is that, Dennis? Asked Fiona. I think it's some kind of magic that's fueled by his emotions, Dennis told them. That would explain these, replied Martin, placing the crystals from earlier into his hands. These were David's tears, he told him. Dennis looked at the crystals. Amazing, said Dennis. Has anything else happened relating to this day? Asked Fiona. I was forced to wait to be let across the busy road, but no one did. So I got frustrated and found myself teleported to the other side of the road, David told them. And when I met him in the street and helped him carry his bags home, he was so happy to be shown kindness. He put this badge on me, Dennis told them. Martin and Fiona looked at each other and then at David. David, honey, I think it's time we told you something important, Fiona told him. I'm adopted, aren't I? Said David at once. How did you know we were going to say that? Asked Martin. I could read it on your minds, replied David, looking crestfallen. In that case, there's more. Your birth parents died giving birth to you, Fiona told him. When was this? Asked David. You were born on the 3rd of March at 3 a.m. Your parents tragically died as soon as you were born, she told him. And so you and Martin decided to take me in and raise me as your own? Asked David. That's right. No matter what any genetics say, you are our son. We love you to bits, and we want you to be happy, Martin assured David, smiling. Martin assured. David smiled at his parents. Mum, Dad, I love you both forevermore. You are my real parents. You brought me into your home as an infant. You raised me as your own son, and have shown me lots of love and kindness, and I really appreciate it, he told them before giving them a massive hug. He cried happy tears so his tears hardened into golden marbles as they dropped to the floor. Dennis picked one up without burning his hand. As he held it, it transformed him. He transformed into his true form, a wizard. The family were amazed to see this. "You're a wizard?" exclaimed David. "Yes, David, and so are you. You have inherited your parents' genes. Your birth parents were Louis and Marie Barriers, two of the most important people to our whole community. The most powerful witch and wizard of their generation," he told him. And that, guys, is the end of Even More Things That Go Bump in the Night. I know one of those was a fantasy story, but I try and do these in lieu of the Twilight Zone, and there's a lot of fantasy stories in that show, so that is it for the Halloween specials this year, guys. If you enjoyed this video, or indeed this trilogy of videos, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have us a magical time.